Hare Krishna, welcome to the question and answer session on the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and we shall start with the first question by Sri Anandji. As long as one is in family life, one of all the other gunas would be dominant. So does this mean one needs to plan for sannyasa so that selfless service can be taken up? Spiritual practice and advancement on the path of spirituality is not solely or exclusively dependent on one's social position, either in family or as a sannyasi. So it is very clearly stated that grihe thako vane thako sada hari bole dako. Whether one stays at home as a grihastha or goes to the forest as a vanaprastha or sannyasi, the most important activity is to be engaged in the practice of sadhana bhakti, of bhakti yoga, by which one can make actual concrete progress in spirituality. So yet in the Vedic conception, in the Vedic plan for the human society, there is the division of the four ashramas of everyone's life. So there is the first Brahmacharya, which is the training of a person in spiritual values and culture, and then Grihastha Ashrama or householder life is like one stage of life which gives a sort of license for a person to engage in materialistic activities and pursuits. But with the proper foundation of Brahmacharya training, a person knows and understands and follows the spiritual culture even in householder life. And then the Vedic conception says that Panchashodhvam Vanam Rachet. At the age of 50, one must plan to retire from the material engagements and then completely devote and dedicate oneself again to the spiritual path of life. So in today's life, we have to see our practical situation, but the principle must be followed that at least from the age of 50, one should plan to retire, to reduce one's engagement in material activities and dedicate oneself to the path of spiritual progress and culture. The next question: in today's city life, we carry lunchbox and eat it after 5 to 6 hours later, then return late from office, have dinner just before bedtime, wondering the impact of food on our mind, as it's a challenge to control mind plus lack of sleep due to early morning or late night office calls. How to balance here, Guruji? Please shed some light here. So actually, once we seriously take up the path of spiritual life, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, Yogaha Karmasu Kaushalam. Yoga is the great art, the great expertise of managing and balancing all the various activities that we perform in life. So first, we take up, we start, we begin the practice of some of the most potent forms of spiritual practices like chanting the Harinama, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra at least 108 times every day, studying the Bhagavad Gita at least for 15 to 30 minutes every day. In this way, if we allocate time for spiritual activities, gradually we would be guided and inspired to balance all these other things in life so that we can have a proper path to elevate ourselves to the higher gunas and then to the transcendental stage. So it's not a very difficult thing to apply the practical principles of spirituality. Just like to give you a simple example, the best kind of food, especially in the morning up to 12 o'clock, is recommended in Ayurveda as well as in naturopathy to be rasyaha, to be rasa ahara, to have fresh vegetable or fruit juices, to have plenty of fruits, plenty of salads and vegetables. So if one properly plans out, one can have plenty of fruits and vegetables up to 12 o'clock in the morning, and then have a good heavy meal in the afternoon, and then have a very light meal in the night, preferably before 7 o'clock or before 8 o'clock, or if it is later than that, then there are ways how to digest our meal. Even if we have a little late, we should cut down on the portion size. We should sit in Vajrasana after having the meal. But yes, the present lifestyle in which we carry lunchbox, have it 5 to 6 hours later, so all this, and having late dinner, so all these things have a lot of impact in dragging our consciousness from sattva guna down to the lower modes of nature. So with proper attention and planning and practice and application of spiritual values, we can gradually make a changeover by which we can elevate ourselves even and plan out our whole day, our eating and our sleeping and all other activities in a nice and proper way, for which is conducive for spiritual progress. The next question by Dr. Shastriji. Prabhuji Namaskara. The yagnas performed by rishis is an example of sattvic type, since they are performed only for loka kalyana, like welfare of humanity, for proper and timely rains, etc. Under which category do Ashwamedha, Rajasuya yagnas come, since both aim at proving the supremacy of kings over others? So actually, even when the Kshatriyas perform some yagnas like Ashwamedha yagna or Rajasuya yagna, and apparently for gaining supremacy or dominion over the world, just like in the Ashwamedha yagnas, a horse is let out and all the kings have to accept the supremacy of the king who has led the horse, otherwise have to be ready to fight a battle. So, but again, the result of such a sacrifice depends on the consciousness of the king who is performing it. Just like we have the example of Yudhishthira Maharaj who also performed the Rajasuya Yagna as well as the Ashwamedha Yagna. In the Rajasuya Yagna, the description in the Mahabharata is very beautifully given how Yudhishthira Maharaj, being a pure devotee of Krishna, was intensely aspiring to prove to the whole world, to all the three worlds, that the supreme absolute truth, the supreme Lord is Shri Krishna. He was so anxious to perform the Agra Puja, the first puja in the Rajasuya Yagna, which would establish Shri Krishna to be the supreme Lord of the entire universe. So that was the mood, the attitude and consciousness of Yudhishthira Maharaj. It was steeped, he was absorbed in pure devotional consciousness of the Supreme Lord. Even when he performed the Ashwamedha Yagna, it is described, it was not for his self-glorification or with any selfish motive. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first canto, in the 10th chapter, it is described that Yudhishthira Maharaj performed 3 Ashwamedha Yagnas. Ajahara Ashwamedham Strin Gangayam Bhuri Dakshinan Sharadvatam Gurum Kritva Deva Yatra Akshi Gocharaha. When Yudhishthira Maharaj performed the Ashwamedha Yagnas, the Devatas, whenever the mantra for offering to the Devatas would be chanted, the Devatas themselves came and accepted the offerings. And the glory of Yudhishthira Maharaj surpassed even that of Shatakratu of Indra, who had performed 100 Ashwamedha Yagnas, because Indra's consciousness was not as pure or devotional as the consciousness of Yudhishthira Maharaj. So therefore the glory of Yudhishthira Maharaj surpassed that even of the king of the heavenly planets, that of Mahendra. So it also depends, the performance and the result of of any yagnas depends on the consciousness of the performer. The next question by Tulasi Kumari ji. Hare Krishna Guruji, as per Bhagavad Gita, we have to perform any puja or yagna as prescribed in Vedas. But nowadays, Vedic scholars are very few in number. Moreover, there are so many differences from state to state in our own country. Even in Brahmin community, there are a lot of variations. Some priests are performing with half knowledge. Many people who rely upon such people and performing puja or homa or havana, will they be responsible for such mistakes? Will such puja phala go in vain? Please throw some light on this. Yes, definitely, as you have explained, that when yagnas are not performed properly, perfectly by qualified priests, it actually gives a contra-indicative result. So what should be done? We should follow the instruction of the Vedas, that all the Vedic scriptures have very clearly stated that the proper right path of performing the highest puja, the highest yagna, the highest spiritual religious activity in the present age called Kali Yuga is not by the performance of fire sacrifice or yagna, but by the performance of Nama Japa Yagna. In Bhagavad Gita also 10.25, Krishna says, Yagnanam Japa Yagnosmi. Of all the varieties of yagna, the highest, the topmost is the chanting of the holy names of Krishna. It is specifically stated in the Kali Santarana Upanishad that Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Iti Shodashakam Namnam Kali Kalmashanashanam Na Ataha Parataropayaha Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate. That Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate, the conclusive truth of all the Vedic scriptures is that in the age of Kali Yuga, in the present age, one should take up the chanting of the holy name of specifically the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and that is the perfect, the ultimate process of yagna in the present age. In the Vayu Purana, it is stated that Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Namaiva Kevalam Kalau nastyeva gatiranyatha. That in the Kali Yuga, in the present age of Kali, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 12th canto also, Shukadeva Goswami says, Kaler doshanidhi rajan asti heko mahan gunaha kirtananeva krishnasya mukta sangaha param rajet. That although Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, there is one greatest quality, which is just by chanting the name of Krishna, one can attain the supreme perfection. In the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that Kalim sabhajayanti aryaha gunagnaha sarabhaginaha yatra sankirtanenaiva sarvaswagtho abhilabhyate. That all the results of yagna, of dhyana, of all spiritual activities in the Kali Yuga is obtained just by one process, which is Sankirtana Yagna, by performing the congregational chanting of the holy name of Krishna. And therefore, Kali Yuga is worshipped even by the people of Satya Yuga and all the other yugas, because the process is so simple. So in Kali Yuga, one should not take the risk of performing fire sacrifices in which there are bound to be some mistakes which cannot be properly executed with qualified priests. So it's better to follow the path recommended for the present time, which is the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. The next question by Shri Pradeep ji. Namaste Guruji, well explained. My first question is, which are a few best material yagnas in modern times? So I have already explained that in modern time, in the present age of Kali Yuga, the one and only recommended yagna is Japa Yagna or Sankirtana Yagna, or the chanting of the holy names of Shri Krishna. We have heard yagnas done by so many kings, but is that knowledge still available? So although the knowledge may be available, is still available, but there are no qualified people to practice and to apply the knowledge which is described about the yagnas. The next question, why no classification has been given about non-material yagna? So non-material yagna or spiritual yagna is one in nature. That is explained in 3.9 of the Bhagavad Gita, that yagnarthat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara, that any action that is done for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord is non-material or spiritual yagna. So that is the process of bhakti. Bhakti is the ultimate spiritual yagna in which all actions are performed, giving up, sacrificing one's selfish motives and for the sake of the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. And in bhakti there is so much of variety, there is infinite variegatedness, but it has been classified into 9 divisions as Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho Smaranam Pada Sevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakhyam Atmanivedanam Iti Pumsarpita Vishnu Bhaktischain Navalakshana. These are the 9 types of varieties of bhakti seva explained by the great devotee Prahlada in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is called Navavidha Bhakti. The next question, there are details on 3 types of food, but why there is nothing on the impact of the environment in which it is cooked or eaten? Yes, definitely. Actually, in Bhagavad Gita, the varieties of food have been explained, the Sattvika Ahara or the Rajasika Ahara or Tamasika Ahara, very, very concisely in just one shloka. 17.8 is Sattvika Ahara, 17.9 is Rajasika Ahara, 17.10 is Tamasika Ahara. So the description, explanation of the variety of ahara or food in the 3 modes of nature is very, very concise. But yes, there is definitely an impact on the environment in which it is cooked or even eaten. So that is more elaborately explained in the Upavedas, like in Ayurveda. There is a detailed description of how one should prepare or cook the food, what should be the environment in which one should eat. So all that is also of great significance, but Bhagavad Gita deals with the highest topics, and therefore these topics have been given relatively less importance, but how the food is cooked, especially the consciousness of the person who is preparing it, actually enters the food that is being cooked, and therefore the person who is preparing the food should be in Sattva Guna, should chant the holy names of the Lord, should elevate his consciousness, should be in divine and spiritual consciousness, and that enters the food, and that will give spiritual benefit to the people who eat it. The most effective way to spiritualize food is to offer it to the Supreme Lord, as stated in 9.26. patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati. So one should offer with love and devotion food to the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna in his Agcha Vigraha, in his deity form, and that spiritual food is prasada. So that should be taken in a calm, in sattva guna. So how we eat, all that is significant for food as well. The next question, Guruji, it is mentioned that Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic people worship different entities. Why was it that all Pandavas, though having different natures, worshipped Lord Krishna? So actually, whether one is Tamasic or Rajasic or Sattvic, if one follows the directions of the Vedic scriptures and if one follows the directions of the great acharyas, then idam ekam sunishpannam dhyeyo narayana sada. One should always exclusively worship the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, Lord Vishnu, Lord Narayana. If one follows the path given in the Bhagavad Gita, one maybe in any level of life, one should take up the complete and exclusive worship of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna as recommended in every chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So, but when one is not properly directed, just like there are examples of the great sage Narada Muni engaging even very, very sinful dacoits, sometimes even snakes and all kinds of living beings in the direct transcendental worship of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. So the Pandavas, apparently externally seeming to be of different natures, actually they do not belong to any of the material nature. The Pandavas, they are already gunatita in all stages of their life, because they are nitya parshadas, they are nitya suris, they are the eternal associates of the Supreme Lord, coming directly from the spiritual world to assist the Supreme Lord in his divine Leela. So they are always in the divine position, and they are teaching us also that what that divine position and worship of Krishna is. And therefore all the five Pandavas, they are situated in their Kutasthaha, they are Akshara Jivas, they are liberated souls eternally, and they exclusively engage in the worship of Shri Krishna. The next question is of three types of tapas of body, mind and speech, and three modes of each. Which is the toughest tapasya? The toughest is definitely tapasya of the mind. So tapasya of the body and of words, of speech, can be performed by discipline, by applying ourselves to some spiritual practices. But tapasya of the mind, because the mind is chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramathi balavadhranam, like explained in 6.34 of the Bhagavad Gita, the mind is the most fickle, the most obstinate and stubborn and difficult to control. So tapasya of the mind is the most difficult, is toughest. And therefore mantra means manaha trayate iti mantraha. Mantra means the vibration by which we can control the mind, and the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is the great chant of deliverance in the present age of Kali Yuga. The next question, why there is no mention of liberation in chapter 17 while it is indicated in many other chapters? It is also indicated in the 17th chapter as well, that Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho brahmanas trividhas smritaha brahmanastena vedascha yagnascha vihita pura tasmad om ityudaharitya yagnadanattapakriyaha kriyante moksha kangshibihi. In the 17th chapter, in 25th verse, it is said that तदित्यभिसन्धाय phalam yagna tapakriyah kriyante mokshakankshivihi. That when one performs yagna, dana and tapa dedicated to the Supreme Absolute Truth, who is indicated by the words Om Tat Sat, kriyante moksha kankshivihi. So those who aspire for liberation dedicate all their acts of sacrifice, tapasya, dana, charity to the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Supreme Lord Krishna, by the words Om Tat Sat. So the last question is, my question is, how much, in which order and how should one read Srimad Bhagavad Gita? So Srimad Bhagavad Gita first of all should be taken in the spirit of submissive hearing from the right source, as it is, without any change, without any interpretation. So it is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita 4.34, Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshyanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadanshinaha. One should approach a bona fide spiritual master in order to learn the truth of the Bhagavad Gita as well, and one should begin right from the beginning, from chapter 1, and go progressively up to the 18th chapter. One should read repeatedly, one should be guided by the Acharya, by the spiritual master, and one should apply the principles of the Bhagavad Gita in one's day-to-day life. And in that way, throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has stated that this knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita can be understood only and only by the devotee of Lord Krishna. So one should apply oneself to the path of Bhakti Yoga, which should open the key, the lock, which is the key to open the lock of the mystery of the Bhagavad Gita. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.